of Christ compels you! Fuck. Okay. Ah!
Mortis.
Introducing the Mortis Trials. The Mortis Trials is the new flagship game mode that is coming with the update Nightmares and Visions that's going to be released only 4 days from now on March 25th. This game mode proposes itself as a wave defense with roguelike elements, and it is psychically induced by the psyker Sephine, who normally manages the meat grinder within the Morningstar. Indeed, as it states here, with the arrival of Commissar Duquesne's Mobian 53rd and the escalation of the battle for Tertium, Rannick has grudgingly decided they need to step up the Rejects training regimen from, well, nothing to something. With resources tight and the Warband's operatives more than a little varied in their approach to combat, he and Morrow have turned the matter over to Sephine, which makes sense given that she's the creator and maintainer of the Morningstar's Meat Grinder, a psychically generated oubliette where Rejects can familiarize themselves with new weaponry. To make this possible, she's manifested a new nightmarescape that Morrow calls Sephine's Reverie. So what is the Mortis Trials, more mechanically speaking? They first talk about what the design idea was behind bringing something like Mortis Trials into the fold with Darktide, and that's in saying that Mortis Trials, which unlocks at only Trust level 13, is a much more accessible game mode for players. It is something where you can have immediate fun. It's not a long-term grind like Havoc. For Havoc, they're saying this is a late game challenge for players that can take many hours, multipliers upon multipliers, and stack mutators. But Mortis Trials is chaotic and immediate access for immediate fun. That being said, though, it doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, and I'm imagining these rounds will break down into very chaotic messes very quick. Hopefully the difficulty is up to snuff and that these actually do get pretty intense, especially considering they're giving us buffs. And speaking of buffs, now we need to talk about what the core gameplay loop is for these trials. As a long-time roguelike player, I think there is a very important sweet spot to hit here. There needs to be a good number and variety of these buffs, and there also needs to be a good amount of time within these trials for us to use the buffs and experiment and play around with that power that we've gotten against incredible enemy forces. There's nothing as bad as getting all of your buffs and then having the game be over in the next second. So that's one thing that I'm looking for. And the second thing that I'm looking for is there needs to be, at least a couple dozen of these buffs to choose from so that no two runs are going to end up the same. That's something that I think Chaos Waste did really well. Although if I had to criticize Chaos Waste in any way, it's that those runs I think are a little bit on the long side. And this seems to be a much more enclosed and shorter proposition, maybe somewhere in the realm of 30 to 40 minutes, which I think would be good given that's the expectation for most normal games within Darktide. Okay, so now we're going to get into a little bit more of the technical side about what waves are coming when and when we get certain buffs and what the conditions are. Forgive me if I get anything wrong during this part because it is not exactly the most technical or precise writing in this post. There are a couple things that could go either way, and I'm going to give you my best interpretation, based on common sense and just the plain text reading of the situation. So, this trial is going to be 12 waves. It's going to be 3 sets of 4 waves with increasing difficulty across each set of 3. When you first launch, you select your difficulty level. It does not say which difficulty levels are available. I would have to assume it goes up to Damnation. I'm really hoping it goes to Auric Damnation, and I would really hope that it goes beyond into like Havoc difficulty at some point, because the way they've given me PTSD with Havoc, I really can't look back at normal games anymore. They're just too easy. So that would be cool. If this is a successful game mode, it'd be very nice if they would give it a boosted difficulty for Havoc veterans. So when you are about to face that initial wave, you will select an Indulgence here. And this is unclear who chooses it. It says that is chosen. This could be random. This could be the whole team chooses it, or this could be each player chooses it. I'm choosing to believe that it is each individual player chooses this Indulgence or archetype. So these archetypes are going to define which buffs will be available to you throughout the run, and they focus your damage around different sort of archetypes, as I said. The first one is Pyrokinetic. This is for fire damage. And I don't think it's specifically for, like, you have to bring the flamethrower, you have to bring the purge staff. It will add fire damage to you in some regards, and it improves your combat effectiveness against burning targets. Voltaic is the same thing, but for lightning. Fulminator is the same thing, but for lightning and fire at the same time, so you get access to both pools of buffs. Death Dealer is for close quarters shooting and melee, swapping back and forth like a Doomslayer sort of build. Colossus is for close quarters brawlers. Probably Ogrins and Zealots are going to be the ones who choose this the most. Survivability, close quarters melee combat. So here's where it gets a little bit confusing, is we have that first small buff from selecting our archetype, but then I think we complete that first round, and then either before or after the second round, you remember the second round out of 12 total rounds, you will get another small buff that's tied to your archetype. Then the third round, or third wave as they're calling it here, is the objective wave. These happen on rounds 3, 6, and 9, and when you complete the objective, you get ammunition, supplies, healing, etc. to keep you going in the trial, and you get to pick an additional stronger buff. It doesn't say whether or not this buff is tied to your archetype, but I'd have to imagine that it is, otherwise why are we choosing these archetypes? And then it goes on to say in the next sentence, after each objective wave, players will pick an additional stronger buff. So it says twice that players will pick an additional stronger buff, and it clarifies the second time that these buffs are often amplifying player abilities, grenades, etc. Only the most devout and blessed will survive. Now, I don't want to get your hopes up here. This could be read two ways, right? This could be read as, oops, this was a mistake, and there's only one buff in these objective waves, a big buff that you get. So you'll get the two small ones, then you'll do the objective wave and you'll get a big one, and you get two more big buffs the rest of the whole game, and then it's over, right? Or it could be read in the way that I prefer to read it, because I want more buffs, is you get the small buff, and then on round 3, you get the objective wave buff that's tied to your archetype, and then you get an additional stronger buff that's amplifying player abilities, grenades, etc. So this would be tied more to the core class identity than to the archetype that you've picked. And that way you would get 2 buffs on round 3, you get 2 buffs on round 6, and you get 2 buffs on round 9, for a total of 6 major buffs and 2 minor buffs. I think that would be a good number to sort of define a build, right? And these waves, these objective waves, can repeat on 3, 6, and 9. As we said, there's no more minor buffs mentioned in between them, so I think that's just to get you kick-started. And then after wave 9, the last 3 rounds, 10, 11, and 12, are super hard, and that's just for you to flex your power and use the buffs that you've got to really just, stunt on these enemies and, play around with your power fantasy, right? To prove that you've conquered the Mortis trials, you have to bring the Mortis relic, which I assume is some fancy trophy that you grab off the last pedestal, and you return that to Stephanie in her reverie. But she has been strained by the crazy amount of stuff going on in these trials, and it pushes her to a limit. And this is where we're getting the ultimate thing that they were saying would come with this mode, which is that we're going to get lore snippets, if that's something that interests you. Stray thoughts and memories are going to slip out of her head, and there might be unintended insights into key members of the Morningstar crew. Repeated playthroughs of the Mortis trials promise different play experiences with new indulgences to try and new conversations to unlock. So perhaps this is like a Hades thing where you don't really progress the side story that's going on here. You can learn more and unlock more about each character as you beat more Mortis trials. That would be kind of cool if they could unlock like more and more stuff onto the dossier about these characters by continuing to play this game mode. And aside from a little back and forth between the narrative lead and the lead writer, that is all there is to this update. There's no more information to be gleaned about the Mortis trials. I mean, there's only 3 more days or 3.5 more days before we'll have it in our hands ourselves, so it's not that long wait, I suppose. Let me know what you think about the potential for this game mode down in the comments. Are you going to be playing it? Or is it like a thing you'll just do until you got the penances and then you'll go back to Havoc or Auric Maelstroms or what? Personally, I'll say that I do actually have some interest in playing this. I've always loved roguelikes. I love roguelike games, and I've always liked the core gameplay feel of Darktide. I think the marriage of those two in Chaos Waste was peak. I love Chaos Waste. Having that in Darktide would be absolutely life-ending for me. I mean, I would sacrifice my whole life to continue playing it and ruin everything else about it. So maybe we can hold out for that, but this might be a good little snippet to tide us over. I'm hoping there's enough content here and enough randomization and enough varied elements that it keeps it interesting, keeps it fresh for at least a little while. But that remains to be seen. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, if you like this sort of update and analysis content, if you want to support the channel, you can like, subscribe, all that normal stuff. You can become a member if you want, and be looking out for new Ogren videos. Going to be a ton of Ogren build guide videos in the weeks after the update. And that's it. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Mystery out. Bye.